Padre Pio was the reason that numerous individuals embraced Christianity and strengthened their faith in Jesus Christ. He was a revered saint who was bestowed with the sacred stigmata, and he bore these wounds with dignity and humility. Despite a life marked by pain and suffering, he endured everything in silence, guided by his unwavering devotion to Jesus Christ. However, one can only imagine what transpired in the moments before his passing. Astonishingly, Jesus Christ himself appeared and talked to Padre Pio just before his demise. To uncover the mysterious message conveyed by Jesus Christ saying Padre Pio, you might want to watch this video until the very end. It was in 1918 that Padre Pio experienced stigmata for the very first time, with wounds appearing on his hands and feet. One morning, after celebrating Mass and feeling drowsy, a deep sense of stillness overcame him. In this moment, he felt an overwhelming that erased all other sensations. Suddenly, a mysterious figure, similar to one he had seen in 1913, appeared before him, but this time the figure's hands, feet and side were bleeding. This sight terrified Padre Pio, and he felt an indescribable sensation, almost as if he would die. However, through divine intervention, his heart was strengthened, and he did not perish. And this is where it starts to get interesting. After the vision vanished, Padre Pio realized that his own hands, feet and side were also bleeding. The stigmata, in which he shared the wounds of Christ, were a gift bestowed upon him by the Lord. These wounds served as a sign of his credibility as a confessor and a man with the ability to discern souls. People were drawn to Padre Pio because of the stigmata, and the Lord used this phenomenon to guide individuals away from sinful paths and difficult situations towards the hope of resurrection. In the solemn days preceding Padre Pio's death in 1968, the circumstances he faced must have been the most peculiar in his entire existence. The visible wounds, which had defined his identity for 50 years, became so ingrained within him that recollecting a time without them must have proved arduous. However, as Padre Pio approached the end of his earthly journey, the wounds on his hand and feet and side began to close. He had received these wounds on the morning of September 20th, 1918. Half a century later, on September 20th, 1968, after several days of gradual fading, they disappeared entirely. The wounds remained only with Padre Pio, whether visible or concealed. They were an integral part of his very being. Did you know that Jesus appeared to Padre Pio for the first time in 1913? 5 years before Padre Pio received the stigmata? You might want to pay close attention now. In a letter to another priest, he described the distressing vision that unfolded before him. Padre Pio was still in bed on a Friday morning when Jesus appeared to him, but this time something was different. Jesus appeared battered and disfigured, a sight that pained Padre Pio's heart. As Padre Pio looked on, Jesus showed him a vast multitude of both regular and secular, including many ecclesiastical dignitaries. Some were celebrating Mass, some were putting on their sacred vestments, and others were taking them off. But what caught Padre Pio's attention and brought tears to his eyes was Jesus' gaze upon those priests. 2 tears rolled down Jesus' cheeks, and it was clear that he was in distress. With great disgust on his face, Jesus moved away from the crowd of priests and called them butchers. Why would he call the priests as butchers? His reason, though, was heartbreaking. Jesus was expressing his disappointment in how these priests were handling their sacred duties. Then Jesus turned to Padre Pio and spoke directly to him. He said, "My son, do not think that my agony only lasted 3 hours. No, I will be in agony until the end of the world because of the souls I have blessed the most." These words conveyed the eternal weight of Jesus' suffering for humanity. Jesus continued, revealing the pain he felt during his agony. He emphasized the importance of not sleeping during this critical time. Jesus longed for even a drop of human compassion, but he felt abandoned under the weight of people's indifference. The ingratitude and indifference of his ministers made his agony even more burdensome. Jesus lamented how poorly his love was reciprocated and how people added contempt and disbelief to their indifference. He even admitted at times he was tempted to strike them if it weren't for the intervention of loving angels and souls. And this is where it gets really shocking. In the first ever letter after receiving the stigmata, he explained everything that happened to him in detail, and this was what he said. On the morning of the 20th of the last month, in the choir, after I celebrated Mass, I beheld before me a mysterious figure, resembling the one I had seen on the evening of August 5th. The only distinction was that his hands, feet, and side oozed blood. The sight filled me with terror, and the emotions I experienced at that moment are beyond description. I believed I might perish, and surely would have, had the Lord not intervened, fortifying my heart that felt as though it would burst from my chest. The vision dissipated, and I became aware that my hands, feet, and side were dripping blood. Imagine the agony I endure, which persists almost every day. The wound in my heart bleeds incessantly, particularly from Thursday evening until Saturday. Dear Father, I am consumed by the pain caused by these wounds and the resulting anguish it inflicts upon my soul. I fear that I may bleed to death unless the Lord heeds my fervent plea to relieve me of this condition. Will Jesus, who is so benevolent, grant me this grace? Will he, at the very least, liberate me from the embarrassment brought forth by these outward signs? I will raise my voice and beseech him unceasingly until, in his mercy, he removes these visible marks that cause me such humiliation and unbearable shame. Out of all the people in the world, Jesus chose Padre Pio to gift him his wounds for the next 50 years. He bore these wounds and the suffering that came with it. This is where things take a sudden turn. Following an arduous Mass on September 22, 1968, at the age of 81, St. Padre Pio, frail and exhausted, needed assistance from his fellow Franciscan brothers to reach his bed. In the early hours of September 23rd, after confessing and renewing his vows, he managed to utter the names Jesus and Mary while holding a rosary, despite his weakened state. A slight improvement in his condition was observed around 2:30 a.m., although those present did not witness anything extraordinary. It seemed as if the saint, who had experienced numerous supernatural occurrences throughout his life, was perceiving something unseen. Summoning his strength, he whispered, "I see two mothers," and softly said, "Maria," before passing away. The nature of his vision remains a mystery. One possibility is that he referred to his spiritual mother, the Virgin Mary, and his biological mother. The Church itself is often symbolized as a mother, though how this manifestation occurred is unclear. While it may seem likely that his final word, Maria, referred to the Blessed Virgin, it's worth noting that his biological mother's name was also Maria. Another mystic, Sister Rita Montella, who had a close relationship with Padre Pio, claimed to have assisted him through biolocation during his final moments. According to her testimony, she believed that the Virgin Mary, St. Francis, and St. Clare were present in his room at the time of his passing. This suggests that when Padre Pio mentioned Maria, he may have been referring to the Virgin Mary. In any case, it is fitting that a man whose life was filled with supernatural encounters would conclude his earthly journey with a mystical vision. Padre Pio's celebration of Mass was renowned, often lasting up to 3 hours. For him, the Mass was a profound engagement of his entire being, representing the pinnacle of his day and the source of his inner strength. Starting his day at 3:30 a.m., he dedicated the early hours to meditation and prayer, preparing his heart for the Holy Mass. When the time came to preside over the Mass, Padre Pio was deeply moved. He immersed himself in the Passion of Christ, understanding the significance of his actions. It was no wonder that he displayed strong emotions during Mass, occasionally shedding tears, his countenance alternating between pale and radiant. His devotion was intense, occasionally accompanied by silent sobs and bodily contractions. Every aspect of his demeanor reflected his profound connection to the Passion of Christ, as if the barrier between the altar and Calvary had been lifted. Moreover, Padre Pio's meticulous attention to every detail of the Mass, from the rubrics to consecration, contributed to the length of his ceremonies. He approached each element with meditation, personally invested in every action. Reciting the liturgy with emotional resonance, he enunciated each word distinctly. The consecration held special significance for Padre Pio, often spending additional time in adoration of the consecrated bread and wine. In his later years, his masses were shorter due to his declining health, lasting around an hour. This serves as a reminder that the Mass is more than meets the eye. It transports us to Calvary, where we encounter Jesus Christ, our Lord. But this is where things get even more interesting. Throughout his life, St. Padre Pio witnessed the evils of the world, enduring the violence and animosity of 2 world wars. Yet in the face of adversity, his devotion to the Mass remained unwavering. It continued to connect him to Calvary, where he encountered Jesus Christ, our Lord. That's not all. Padre Pio was an ardent believer of the Virgin Mary and spent most of his time with the Rosary. It provided him strength with each passing day. However, Padre Pio and his deep devotion to the Virgin Mary was not newfound. From a young age, his love for Mary was unwavering and grew stronger throughout his life. Padre Pio's affection for Mary was evident in his daily routine, as he would pray the Rosary whenever he had a free moment. He always carried the Rosary with him, either holding it or keeping it close by. One of the Capuchins who assisted him recalled how Padre Pio would wash his hands, making sure to keep one hand free to hold his Rosary. He once said that some people foolishly believe that they can navigate life without the help of the Blessed Mother, but he knew that the Rosary was a powerful weapon against the world's evils. Padre Pio fervently prayed the Rosary every day and even kept a few under his pillow. On a night when he couldn't find his rosaries, he urgently called for someone to bring him his weapon. For Padre Pio, the Rosary was not just a string of prayers, but a heartfelt offering to his beloved Mother in heaven. He had a profound love for the Virgin Mary and relied on her during times of trial. Padre Pio believed in the Blessed Mother's powerful intercession, which could heal both body and soul. He encouraged others to persevere in praying the Rosary daily, believing that anything is possible when it's done devoutly and with the heart. Padre Pio was truly one of the most blessed saints in the Catholic community. His connection with God was so deep that God felt like sharing his wounds with him. While we may not possess the same level of worthiness as Padre Pio to bear the stigmata, let us entreat our Lord Jesus Christ to grant us the strength and courage necessary to draw near to the sacrament of Holy Communion and strive to become better individuals than we were in the past.